Hi students. Well, it's time for art class, and let's talk about grading and deadlines first before we go to the Godzilla of the week. First, I've included deadlines or due dates on your projects just so that you know when I want to collect them. Now, if you finish them early, that's sometimes I've had a couple students finish them a little early and they turn it in sooner, that's fine. Um, Even if you turn it in later, that's fine. Uh, because sometimes you miss your pod time and you just can't turn it in. I understand. Just turn it in next time as soon as you can. But after the due date, in Power School, I'll put a zero as a placeholder for your grade. And I've told you this a couple times already, so hopefully you know it already. But if you get a zero, don't worry, it's not necessarily an F. It's just a placeholder until I get your project, right? When you turn in your project, when I get it, I'll change the grade to whatever grade it's going to be. But if at the end of the trimester, if you haven't turned in your work, the zero is a zero, and that will lower your grade. So don't let that happen. Just turn in your work. It's okay if it comes in late. Try not to. Try to get your work turned in on time. But if it's late, that's fine. Just turn it in. So that way the zero doesn't remain a zero at the end of the trimester. So don't forget, you can turn in your work and I will change your grade up until the end of the trimester. And you're like, wow, Mr. Smith, why are you saying that so much? Because I know some students will freak out when they see that zero. No need to worry. Just finish your work and turn it in and you'll be fine. All right? Sounds good. What else do I want to say? I think that's it. So let's go to the Godzilla of the week. Oh, so the Godzilla of the week, it was tied between Mecha King Ghidorah and Destroyer. So, and I apologize, I think I didn't put it in for, the quiz didn't work right for 5th grade. I didn't set it up right. So sorry, 5th graders, you didn't get to vote, but that's okay. You're fine. You still get to see the Godzilla. So it was a tie between Destroyer and Mecha King Ghidorah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you King Ghidorah. Mecha King Ghidorah today, and we're not going to have a survey next week. I'll just show you Destroyer next week because he tied. So no quiz, Godzilla quiz next week. I'm just going to show you Destroyer next week. But for today, here's Mecha King Ghidorah. So here he is. He's pretty awesome. Let's see here. So this Godzilla was in, I don't know, he was in the 1991 version of Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. And he's even got cool stuff on the ends of his tails. Robot stuff. And this is a pretty cool movie for back in the day. What happened was halfway through the movie, you know, King Ghidorah gets defeated. And I think he loses a head. And so at the end of the movie, they repair him and he fights Godzilla again. I don't remember. I don't want to spoil the movie, but it is Mecha King Ghidorah was cool in the movie. So that's all I got to say. And that's why I got this model. This model is made out of resin, not out of vinyl. The other models are made out of vinyl, which is a soft plastic. Resin is kind of like a hard plastic, and so he's like super brittle, and he can break real easy, and that's kind of scary. And also, like, parts are heavy on a resin kit. So like for this wing, like there's a peg here, right, that it plugs in. But I had to use a piece of metal, like the end of a paper clip. I'd cut it off and drill a little hole for support for wings like this. Otherwise these wings would just fall right off. So resin's a little trickier to work on, but they hold a lot more detail. Let me see if you can see the detail in the wing. Is that going to blur? There's like texture in the wing. I don't think you're able to see it. Whatever, it's alright. But there's like really cool texture in the wing that you wouldn't be able to get in vinyl. So, it's like a grid. Okay, that's it. That's Godzilla of the week. Okay, So next week, no quiz, or this week, no quiz, and I'll just show you Destroyer next week because they were tied. They were tied for 13 votes each. So that's it for this part of the lesson. Let's go on to the art part. So we're going to talk about art now. Hi, fourth graders. Now it is time to continue our Swatch Watch. You remember last week I drew my hipster octopus Swatch Watch, and you drew some kind of design. You could have used shapes, you could have used little characters, you could have used flowers or fruit or whatever you want to draw. You drew it. And another thing I talked about is using the whole watch as a canvas, meaning you kind of draw stuff all over, not just in this little spot in the watch face, but in the whole watch and the watch bands and all that stuff. Okay, great. So we have a pretty good, hopefully you have a pretty good drawing right now. And don't forget, make sure your name is on the back of your paper. And let's see if I can move this closer so it doesn't autofocus so much. I don't know. Let's try that. Okay, now we're going to start coloring. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind when you color is I want you to color the whole watch. Like, don't leave the background white unless you have a lot of stuff to color. What happens is I get a lot of students where they don't want to color. They want the easy way out. And so what they do is they just draw a couple things, they color it, and they keep the background white. Well, if you do that, that's not very much work. So you want to color the whole watch. So I'm going to color my background. You can use colored pencils, markers, or crayons. You can use a combination too. Crayons work well with colored pencils. In fact, maybe I'll use crayons for my background because they color quicker. Okay, so I got a blue crayon. When you color, you might, boy, you can't see that. Let me see if I can get around here. Oh man, you can edge around certain shapes, right? And then you can color them in. Let's see here. You want to color as neatly as possible. You want to fill it in as best you can, trying to make that solid, right? That doesn't look that solid, but that's pretty solid for a crayon, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see. But it helps that I edged in that shape first, right? Let's see. This doesn't look as good as a colored pencil. I thought it would look a little better. Maybe it's just this color. But you can see a lot of kind of white leftover spots. Let me try to cover that up as best I can. It doesn't look too bad if you go for it. Okay, so I'm going to do some of those. I'm probably not going to have time to finish my whole watch today because that would take a long time. But you can finish your watch. So I'm coloring these blue. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to color every little spot like that. Now let's try a colored pencil. So let's see. I want to pick a different colored pencil for in here. Maybe I want to pick a complement. Ooh, I don't have orange. Is this orange? It's like a red. Oh, it's orange. Boy, it looks red. So I'm gonna color this. Now you can color whatever you want, but I'm gonna color the inside of this. This is like an orange red. It looks more like a red than an orange. It's a dark orange. I'm gonna edge a little bit around him. And fill in. Colored pencils are neater, so they work pretty good. Yeah. Although on the camera it doesn't look as neat. Still see some white. Also, the more I color with this, I get an edge. I get a chisel on my colored pencil, and so it enables me to kind of um, color more broadly, and I can fill in my areas quicker that way. I'm gonna edge around here, fill in. Remember, you just want to color neatly and carefully. You want to kind of overlap your lines, and you want to kind of go in the same direction. Like you don't want to kind of just scribble it in. Although sometimes you can make that look good, but if you go in the same direction and you overlap your lines, it will look as neat as possible. And you just want your color to be as solid as possible. You don't, and along the edges too. A lot of times, here I'll demonstrate it down here. But like students, they won't totally match that edge. Like they'll just, yeah, that's pretty good. Like I don't know, they go like I don't want to mess mine up, but they're and they just kind of leave the edge like that. Like no, like that's why I edge, right? I kind of go in here and I edge, and you just fill the whole thing in. I don't want to put my arm around the camera. I have to put my arm around the camera so you can see my pencil better. I feel bad though. It's too hard to do it. I have technical limitations. Okay, so I'm edging, coloring in. One nice thing about colored pencils and crayons is that they don't run out of ink. When you use markers, markers look really good, but they run out of ink. And when they run out of ink, it doesn't look good. So I don't know what to tell you. Look how much darker this is than that. So I could probably make this a little darker too. Okay, but that's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty solid. So I'm making my progress. Colored pencils, crayons, they look pretty good. I'm not going to use markers, but markers work well if they have enough ink. The problem is markers run out of ink, and so I don't know what to tell you. Probably the best thing to do is if you have a couple things of markers, like if you're using red and it runs out, you have another red to use. But that can get kind of expensive. So crayons are okay. Just be careful. Better is colored pencils. Colored pencils are probably your best bet, but I leave it up to you because you have to provide your own crayons, markers, or colored pencils at home. So whatever works, works in my opinion, right? Now, there's one more thing we can do, and it will make it's optional, but I highly recommend it. And I think you should do it if you have a thin black marker. So I have an ultra fine point Sharpie. You might have seen these at school. And a regular Sharpie, they call a regular Sharpie a fine point, but it's actually, yeah, this is a fine point. You can't even read it. Fine point, but it's actually kind of broad, right? I mean, this one's ultra fine, and so it's like really thin, right? And that would be really useful for tracing. Now you don't have to trace everything, but like tracing important details, like my octopus. So if I can trace around him carefully, and it will make him stand out. So you can see already he stands out way better, right? And I can trace around him. Let's see, do I have to go behind? Oh my gosh, I'm going behind the camera. Oh, here we go. So you can trace around stuff. So this is an ultra fine point. Oh, I messed up. Oh man, that's what happens when you go behind the camera. Okay, I don't want to go behind the camera. Okay, oh my, it's so hard to do it this way. This is hilarious. You won't have this problem because you won't have a big tripod in front of you. Okay, that's it. I'm going in front of the camera. Sorry, camera. So yeah, it'll be harder for you to see, but I'll be able to control my lines better. But you want to trace, right? Here, I got to get this. It bugs me that I messed this up. All right, good. He's kind of his eyebrows kind of go into his hat. That happens in some anime. But I'll just kind of finish him quickly. You can kind of see how already he looks more he's more noticeable. And that's kind of nice. I'm going to add some hatching here. I don't know if we talked about hatching in this class. No, we didn't. That was 5th grade. Okay, anyways, I'm going to finish him. I'm not going to trace all of his tentacles and stuff because that would take a long time. And I'm just going to show you the techniques. Now, don't think just because I didn't finish mine doesn't mean you don't have to finish yours. No, you have to finish it. Okay. Oh, I got to do his beard real quick. He's got like a total beard here. So let's see. I got to... Now, tracing in ink may not work next to crayon. So if you colored everything in crayon, you may not be able to trace your drawings in ink because it may not work. Because crayon is wax and it's kind of slick. I don't know, but colored pencil, it can. Let me see if I got it. I'm going to fill in his mouth. Let's see, do I have a big black in here, I hope? Yeah, so here's a Crayola black. Let's try it. See, these are pretty thin too. So if you have these thin Crayola markers, these will probably work for tracing around stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, very good. Ooh yeah, this is real nice. This is almost thinner. It's as thin as the ultra fine point Sharpie. So this works really well for tracing stuff. So if you have these thin, you know, these thin markers, these will work. You can get them at Target. You can probably get them anywhere. Hopefully you have some. If not, it's not mandatory. You don't have to trace things, but I recommend it. It will make your project look really good. And that's the whole point, is to make your project look really good, right? There, that looks pretty good. Awesome. So I recommend you trace important parts. Like, I'm probably not going to trace the outlines on these waves. I'm just going to leave those just a color. And these will kind of work together. There, you can see like a light blue, darker blue. It's kind of like a turquoise. This is the turquoise. Yeah. So that's working really well. Let's see here. Here I didn't edge. Well, mainly because it's like kind of blue going into blue. It doesn't look so, it kind of fits better. But normally, you saw earlier, I edged. I would color his hat. Let's see, we got some time. Let's see, what time is it? We got a little bit of time. I don't want to do a green hat. I want to do, you know what I'll do? Here's what I'm going to do. He's going to have a green stripe on his hat. And then it'll be a brown hat. Notice how I'm very careful to get all up to the edge, right? Like, you don't just, like, you go to the edge and you color it all in. You're like, yeah, Mr. Smith, I know, but I have a lot of students that don't do that. Like, they don't go real neat up to the edge. It's not that hard to do. I think they're just lazy. Heaven forbid I should say that. I have lazy students. But they just don't, I don't know, like, they'll go like this. Like, so they'll color, here, I'll show you. Like, I know, you don't have to show me. Okay, I'll do this part too. So they're like this. Let me see if I can make this come closer. So they colored it in, like, this part's neat, but they didn't go all the way to the edge, like here and here. So make sure you go in and finish all that off. It's not that hard to do. You just kind of go in there and you just finish it neatly, go along that edge. Sometimes I start, like I said, I edge it to begin with. That's fine, but if you don't edge it to begin with, like this was a small detail. I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed to edge it right away. Like I'll let you decide, but it doesn't mean I leave it kind of blank on that edge, like over here. Like I'm gonna color that in when I'm finished, and I can go slower and neatly, and it looks really good. One nice thing you can do with colored pencils is you can kind of do some shading. Now, I'm just giving you some tips. This isn't essential, but I kind of have like a shadow right here on his hat. And if I press down a little harder with my colored pencil, remember this works, you can't do this with markers and you can't really do this with crayons. I mean, you might be able to do it with crayons a little bit, but colored pencils is the best way to like add shadows or shading. So I'm just going to press down a little harder just right here for a little bit, and it'll kind of make like a shadow. You're like, oh yeah. And then I could press down not as hard and it will blend it. So I kind of went, let's see, the camera is not capturing it very well. But I can blend it a little more. Like, so I press down the hardest near the darkest part of the shadow. And then I kind of not, and then in the middle it's like not as hard, like not as hard pressure. And then where it's the lightest, it's like the least amount of pressure. Wow, looks pretty good. Yeah, and I can add a little bit of shadow over here. Let's see here. This is what you can do with colored pencils. So colored pencils are nice. The harder you press down, the darker it will look, and it'll make like a shadow effect. Wow, that's pretty cool. And that was pretty easy. Here, I'll add a little bit of shadow here. I'm going to press down a little darker here and a little darker here. Now, you might be wondering, Mr. Smith, how does here, I'll do the green too, since I'm really having fun with this. So I'll go little, this is pretty dark already. It's pretty dark, so it's harder to make this. Let's see here. Yeah, you can kind of see it. So what did I do here? Notice that the shadow didn't go all the way to the edge. And why did I do that? This is really complicated, but I'll just tell you anyways, just to put a seed in your mind for the future. What happens is this is kind of a fancy way to make a dynamic shadow. What happens is when you go to a photography studio, usually they have a little bit of light behind the person, and it creates this this highlight on the edge of the person's head, right? And so sometimes they call that like rim lighting because it's like on the rim, right? But it looks kind of dynamic. Now, it wouldn't have necessarily been wrong if I put my shadow all the way to the edge, right? But it looks kind of neat. It looks like a little highlight along the edge of his head or hat. And so I kind of use that a lot just because it's dynamic. Like if I was going to shade his body here, do I have a color for his body? I want gray. I don't really have a... But what I would do is, I don't know what color to do my octopus. I'm going to do a green. But like I would kind of start, like I would go like lighter here. Like I would color them all in, right? But then I would go darker here and I would kind of create that. Doesn't mean I don't go green all the way to the edge. It's just lighter. And then this is kind of like that rim lighting. I did that in comic books a lot because it's dynamic. So let's see, I'm going to go here. Let's see. I guess I'm coloring him green here. Here we go. Again, you don't have to do this. I just want to teach you something. It's kind of more advanced, but just because it's advanced doesn't mean I can't start to teach you about it. And then as you grow older, there, so you can kind of see it. So let's see. Just because it's advanced doesn't mean I can't tell you about it at all. You might forget it, and then when you grow up, you'll be like, oh yeah, like rim lighting, it looks so cool. Or maybe you're looking at comic books. They don't do it too much in comic books nowadays because it's like difficult, but I did it back in the day because I was awesome. Okay, but here you can see, so it's kind of like a shadow here, but then there's a little bit of light hitting here. Also, light bounces off stuff, believe it or not. Like you don't see the light bouncing off in real life, but like light will bounce off walls and stuff, and it'll kind of light certain areas. They call that reflected light, and that's a photography thing too. But whatever, I mean, You don't even have to do that. I just want you to, I'm just talking. I want you to know about that information. I'm going to put a little shadow under his head there. Yeah, so he's looking pretty good. So I talked mostly about, now I didn't finish everything, but I would color everything. So like if I was a student, I would color, I would color the rest of his body kind of green. I'd probably trace all of his tentacles, and maybe I would trace all these little suckers, suction cups on his arms. Probably would. If you don't have a thin marker like this, a thin black marker, then you don't have to do it. But you know, one thing you could do though is once you're finished coloring and stuff like that, you could get a regular pencil and just make it darker along that edge. You can make it darker along that edge. And that will make it more bold, kind of like a black. But in all honesty, black looks better. You know what else you could do? You could use a black... Dude, do I not have my black here? I don't have my black. But if you have a black colored pencil, a black colored pencil would work even better too. If you have a black colored pencil, you can trace around the most important parts. But here's what I recommend. If you're going to use a black colored pencil to trace around important parts, color it in first. Like I would color in his tentacles, you know, I'd color in everything, I'd color the background. Then I would use a black colored pencil and then trace along that edge. Because what happens is, if you have a lighter, if I do black, if I trace this in a dark black colored pencil, and then I try to color yellow or a lighter color in here, it will smear and it'll look kind of like mustard. It won't look like yellow anymore. It'll look kind of gross. So do the black colored pencil outline last if you're going to do that. If you have a marker, you can kind of do it first because colored pencil doesn't smear with black marker, but make sure it's a thin black marker, right? And don't use a crayon for outlines. That won't work very well. You know, it just won't work very well. So anyways, I would finish him. I didn't finish my whole, I didn't color everything. I just colored parts of it. But you're going to color your whole watch. Oh, and what about numbers? What happens if you want to do numbers? You can definitely do numbers. Let's see, I don't want to do numbers on him. Let me show you. You get one. So this one has numbers. If you want to do numbers, gosh, let me see. Do I have an empty one that I can just draw on? Here it is. Good. Good, I can show you. Okay, so if you're going to do numbers, here's what I recommend. You want to draw them neatly and carefully, right? But there's a trick, because what happens is you can see like, oh my gosh, all these numbers? Like, what happens if I run out of room, right? That can happen real easily. So here, I'll just put this here so you can see it. So here's what I recommend. Start with the 12. The 12 is right on top. So you would go like, I'll do this lightly. Well, I would do it lightly too, and then you could fill it in darker later, or you could trace it with a marker. So start with the 12 on top, right? Then the 6 is directly underneath it, right? So you go 12, and then the 6 is here, right? And then the 3 is right over here. So it's kind of like four corners. There's like, was like north, south, right, east and west, and we got 3 and 9 here, right? So then this way it's going to be 3, so it's like 3 here, and then 9. So that's the easiest way to do it. Now, some watches don't have all of the numbers. Sometimes they only have 12, 3, 6, and 9. Maybe they have dots instead. Like there'll be like a dot here and a dot, like a dot for number 1, dot for number 2. You could do that. You could even do dots instead. They don't have to be numbers. You could have like a big dot for 12, a big dot for 3, 6, and 9, and then you have smaller dots for 1, 2, 4, 5, right? You can do that too. It's up to you. You don't even have to have numbers, but numbers are cool, so you should put numbers in. Don't be lazy. My guy, it's hard to have numbers on him, so I'm not going to do numbers on him. I could maybe put a 12 here, or I could put some dots. Dots would probably look good. Dots wouldn't kind of ruin the picture. I could do dots instead of... If you do dots, though, you should make them pretty big. Like, they should be kind of like this. Let's see here. Like circles, almost. You want to be able to see them, right? Or you could do numbers. Or don't do numbers for... You want to kind of leave space in there, right? Or don't. Just do 12, 6, 3, and 9. It's up to you. Now, what about the watch hands? Well, you want to find the center, and you can just draw it. So this, I think Mrs. Hamady did this a while back. She just drew her watch hands in. So like you could just draw it, and you could put whatever time you want. Lunchtime, you know, school's overtime. You don't really have school's overtime anymore because you're at home. But you could do, you know, whatever. So you can do, I could do like 1 o'clock. Usually the smaller watch hand is the hours, and then the longer watch hands. So that's yeah. So what this would be 1. I'm like psyching myself out. So 1, right? Now, that's pretty small. I recommend that if you draw watch hands, make it pretty big. Like you can kind of embolden it and kind of make it a bigger, make it kind of like a bigger, more noticeable watch hands, because otherwise you're not gonna be able to see it. So there, I'm gonna make it bigger. I'm gonna make my little arrows. You're like, do I have to use arrows? You don't even have to use arrows. I could make this like a, that kind of an arrow, or this kind of an arrow, or no arrows. It's up to you. But there, that's nice and bold, so it's easy to see, right? Anyways, that's if you want to do numbers. Once you're done, you want to color everything. Make sure your name is on the back. Then you're going to cut it out. So I'm going to cut out my watch here. So you're going to get scissors, right? Now, cut carefully. I have some students that are in such a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. You're going to cut very carefully and right on the line. It's going to blur. And you know what this looks like? Is a wrestling belt. Do a wrestling belt for your watch. The shape. Okay. Okay. So, cut it out there. I'm going to cut it out on the top. And that's all you have to do. Just make sure you color neatly. Color the whole watch. Don't leave it white. It can be light. It can be a light color in the background. I didn't finish mine, so don't think just because I didn't finish mine, yours doesn't have to be finished. I just didn't want to take a long time to color my watch. The nice thing is, if you color it outside the lines a little bit, when you cut your watch out, you're going to cut that away. So that's nice. That'll help clean up your coloring a little. But remember, you want to edge, you want to color solid, and you want to color as neatly as possible. If you use markers, you want to use newer markers. The problem with markers, I love markers, but they always run out of ink. Even like while you're working on something. Here's one more tip. If you're coloring with markers, like, I don't know, where's my big markers? You know, if you're coloring with a marker and let's say I'm coloring the background orange, I'm coloring it and it's like running out of ink. What I recommend is you're coloring it, cap it, it's just drying out. Cap it, do a different color, and then come back to the orange or whatever color that was running out and color it again. So if you color with these for longer than like a few minutes, they start to dry out. So cap it, do a different color, come back to it, uncap it, color it again. That might help. That might help. It doesn't, if it has no ink in the pen, then yeah, that's not going to help. But that's it. So we colored our watch. Oh, you can't read it, but my name is here. Put your name on the back. Bring this to school if you can, and put it in your art folder because I want to collect them. I want to see what you did and see how cool your project is. Remember, color neatly. And this is due September 29th, so this will be due, you know, next week. So you got some time. That doesn't mean you leave it to the last minute. You're gonna, you know, you're gonna work on it, and if you need a little more time, you can work on it while you're bored or not doing anything at home. So you're gonna color it and turn it in by September 29th. And like I said, don't forget, if you get a 0 on one of your projects, it just means that you didn't turn it in. So just finish your project, turn it in, and I'll change your placeholder 0 grade into an actual grade, whatever grade you're going to get. So don't worry about that. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of my video. If you did turn in a project, like let's say you turned in your Rubik's Cubes, but you still got a 0 on your Rubik's Cubes, and you're like, Mr. Smith, I turned in my Rubik's Cubes, but how come I got a 0? Maybe it's because your name wasn't on it, and I didn't know it was from you, so I didn't know who to grade it. So if you turned in a project and you still got a 0, that means maybe it was a no name. Maybe you forgot to put your name on the back. And send me a nice email, and I'll look at my no names, and maybe we can talk about it or work it out. Maybe we can identify it or whatever. Or maybe I'll just look a little more carefully. Maybe you did turn it in, but I skipped it, and I'll just look in my projects and see maybe I missed it. But if you turned in your project and you got a 0, let me know and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I did turn in my project, but I have a 0. Is it a no name? Or anyways, I'll get back to you and I'll help you get a grade. But that's it for this week. So you're going to finish your nice watch, your Swatch watch. You're going to bring it to school if you have pod time at school. If you're remote only, you can just take a picture of it and just email it to me in Canvas, or you can just have a parent email me directly, or you could email me directly. My email is in there. So that's it. So hopefully you had fun with this. I really like my hipster octopus. I kind of want to finish him now. Maybe I'll finish him, and because he's pretty cool. I like him. He's kind of fun, and I like the colors. And I've just begun coloring in his, whatever, his skin. So anyways, he looks cool. So have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.